Port Valdez is the northernmost ice-free port in the United States and is a direct access to critical infrastructure in the interior of Alaska. The port hosts the Trans-Alaska Oil Pipeline, which terminates in Valdez and ships out over 150 million barrels of crude oil annually throughout the lower 48 and other areas of the world. In 2020, the terminus of the Valdez Glacier collapsed and sent a mile of that glacier into the lake and into its outflow. Well, that exposed a huge portion of the lake that had never been surveyed, and we didn't know anything about that. We needed to better understand what the underwater environment looked like in those areas.
Valdez has had a steady population of about 4,000 people for the past couple decades. The port plays a really important part for the citizens in that we only have one road in and out of Valdez, which sometimes will get compromised due to landslides, avalanches. So therefore, the port is our lifeline, really, to the outside world.
Primary industries in the city of Valdez are oil, tourism, and the fishing industry, which are vital parts of our economy, and they depend greatly upon an efficient and functioning port. In 1964, a 9.2 magnitude earthquake struck the city of Valdez and caused not only damage from the earthquake, but a tsunami as well that impacted the coastline. There were over 30 individuals that lost their lives. Many of them were families, and local businesses were devastated because of that, and many of them didn't even recover. Because of that earthquake and subsequent tsunami, the Army Corps of Engineers moved the community from its original town site to a new town site that had more bedrock and more stable soils. The city's primary purpose for this project was to acquire hydrographic data of both the port and the Valdez Glacier lakes in order to have topographical maps of the ocean floor and the glacier lake to better understand our hazards and risks, such as tsunamis, landslides, that could impact our community. It's going to help us protect the public and our critical infrastructure.
Woolpert is a global architecture, engineering, geospatial, and strategic consulting firm with over a century of experience. Woolpert has been mapping Alaska for over 20 years. Our work includes mapping for telecommunication cable route surveys, harbor mapping, navigation, and charting, as well as emergency response efforts.
So the city of Valdez is located on a fjord, and so it is very steep-sided, and there are unconsolidated sediments that have been deposited there by these glacial rivers. And in an earthquake, in a seismic event, that unconsolidated sediment can collapse. It can fail catastrophically underwater. And so that submarine landslide, that underwater landslide, can generate a tsunami.
The seafloor itself changes, and that's particularly true up in Alaska. Alaska is very dynamic. It's tectonically active. The land's moving, and of particular interest here in Valdez is the glaciers. Glaciers are giant rivers of ice that are just grinding down mountains, and the amount of sediment input from the rivers that discharge from the glaciers is tremendous. So if you haven't seen one of these, or you haven't stood at a glacial outlet, it is an amazing amount of ground-up mountain that's coming down into these bays. And that fills up, rapidly builds underwater deltas. And one of the big concerns here is those are unstable, and they can slump fail. And when they do, generate tsunamis that can cause a tremendous amount of damage.
The decision to do new mapping for the basin of Prince William Sound, Port Valdez specifically, it hadn't been done since 2002. And with over 22 years of change and evolution, we figured it was time to get some new data to have better understanding of what's going on below the seafloor here locally on our coastline.
The maritime economy is largely invisible to most Americans, but it's fundamental to the functioning of our economy today. Whether you think about grain exports coming down the Mississippi River and heading overseas, or oil moving from, say, Valdez down to refineries on the West Coast, the supply chains are so important to everything we do. It's so important to every aspect of our economy. And it's critical that we have updated navigational products to support that.
So our primary mission is safety navigation, is paramount to the blue economy, but there is a whole host of other uses that the fundamental bathymetric data that we collect can be used for. So everything from coastal resiliency to energy infrastructure planning where cables might be laid, shoreline stability. So you needed updated bathymetry for any sort of water level or hydrodynamic modeling. And so the modern full resolution bathymetry data we collect is the foundation of a whole host of other studies and supporting scientific investigations that can be conducted in these areas.
Yeah, so the Brennan Matching Fund is a neat program that's, I think, useful in both outreach and getting folks who are interested in seabed mapping data but may not have the expertise or the funds to go and contract that or get that themselves. But it allows us, who are experts in ocean mapping, to have those conversations with different constituents to help translate those needs into actionable survey contracts.
So the wonderful thing about the Brennan Ocean Mapping Fund is the type of projects we can support and the mutual benefit to both us and the partner and the general public for us working together. This program came about as a means to bring the ocean and coastal mapping community together, to take those that are external to the federal government that have needs for ocean and coastal mapping data and match them up with our federal expertise and our capacity to execute mapping contracts, to pair that money together and to go off and do really awesome stuff and advance the mapping of U.S. waters.
It's always beneficial to be able to partner with other organizations to help spread the cost of some of these projects. It's a pretty expensive project that if we were to do it by ourselves would be something that we probably wouldn't be able to afford. But being able to use federal dollars, it helps us get data and information that we wouldn't have been able to achieve otherwise, but it also helps us to provide information to the nation as a whole. And it's not one person who has to pay the expense and expend all of their money to accomplish this type of study.
Yeah, so Rick Brennan, Rear Admiral Rick Brennan, was the previous director of the Office of Coast Survey who tragically died shortly after taking over the office. A real passionate guy about hydrography, about surveying, about the people in the community, but in particular to really reaching out to additional folks. So I think projects like this, where we're working closely with the city, we're working on geological hazards, we're updating the chart. He was pushing for this for years, and so it's good to see this vision come to fruition.
So we have this great hydrographic survey contract where NOAA has 6 of the leading vendors in the hydrographic and geospatial field. But that's why the 70-30% match with NOAA bringing 70% is so valuable, in that we can not only bring additional funding, but also bring our project management contracting services, as well as our relationships with these great vendors to be able to get the partner high quality mapping and bathymetry data to complete their project at a significantly reduced cost to the partner.
NOAA's original plan for the project was to just survey Port Valdez, but the City of Valdez was particularly interested in acquiring high-resolution data for Glacier Lake. Glacier Lake is at the northeast corner of the City of Valdez and is at the terminus of the Valdez Glacier. This glacier is currently in a receding cycle and over the past several years typically experiences 2 glacial outburst floods per year. These factors make the area susceptible to glacier collapse.
Typically, NOAA only works with ocean surveys, but because of the proximity of the lake to the ocean and to our critical infrastructure, they were willing to include that survey at no additional cost to the City of Valdez.
The Valdez Basin is very deep. The project depths range from the shoreline down to about 1,000 feet or 300 meters deep. And so it was important that we executed this project with the correct sonar. So we showed up with a sonar that has the capability for a wide dynamic range of frequencies, 90 kilohertz up to 450 kilohertz. That allowed us to map the deep water and the shallow water with the optimal frequencies to get the highest resolution possible.
Our recent work in Valdez Glacier Lake required innovative approaches, optionally crewed watercraft with custom equipment to safely and accurately map this remote and dynamic landscape.
The challenge of the glacial lake is that because it's a lake, there was no boat launch, and there's a lot of icebergs floating in the lake. So it wasn't possible to take one of our normal survey boats. So we brought a system that is basically an uncrewed survey vessel, and we deployed it into the lake, and then we put a small skiff into the lake as well to help escort this uncrewed vessel. Finding a route through the icebergs was particularly challenging. Luckily, we got some help from the City of Valdez. The emergency manager there actually came out in his kayak and helped us find a route through the icebergs, through and kind of over. As some of these icebergs, of course, you're just seeing the top of the iceberg. So in a lot of places, they're touching underwater, and you're actually traveling up over the top of the iceberg.
The access to that area is difficult because of glacial ice and icebergs, and it took literally several days to find a pathway through there. Would have been easy for them to just tell us we can't do that, but between myself and a kayak and them, we were able to find a pathway through with their vessel, and were able to grab that data while they were still here in Valdez.
So this data is going to be used for a lot of different reasons. For industry, it's going to give us an idea of depths and soundings, whether it's developing new infrastructure or making sure that the ships and vessels that are within our waters have clear navigation and there aren't underlying hazards to where they're going to be going. I think that's going to be critical.
Habitat modeling, looking at resources, submerged resources, looking at managing those resources. It's one of the biggest boundary conditions for physical oceanographic models. So the uses of our bathymetric data are many. Certainly updating the nautical charts, but we get a lot of other uses out of it.
It's important locally, but it's also important nationwide because, like we saw recently, earthquakes and tsunamis in faraway lands can actually impact the continental United States as well. And so it's important to have a good understanding of what are our risks locally, but how does that impact the rest of the nation?
There are so many applications for bathymetric data. They're wide-ranging, and it's not just for safe navigation, which might be a core mission of the Office of Coast Survey, but it's for all these other purposes as well. And we love that we can work with our partners, put that money together, and make these projects happen.
At Woolpert, we have experts in hydrography, and we came prepared to this project with the correct vessels and the correct sonar. But ultimately, it's our people that made this project successful. We have very talented hydrographers and very talented data processors that were able to really bring this project together and deliver a product that should be very useful for the city and for NOAA.
Being able to work with other federal agencies, create partnerships and relationships. You never know down the road who you may have worked with or partnered with, how that relationship is going to be beneficial down in the future. Working with NOAA and Woolpert, those were relationships that we were able to establish and connections that may be used for other projects, but it may also just be something that it helps us understand their processes for a future grant down the road or other opportunities that may come up.
NOAA was a supportive and engaged partner throughout this entire project process. From the very beginning, they helped us understand whether our project and what we were trying to accomplish met their qualifications for the Brennan Matching Fund. And then throughout the application process, all the questions that we had were answered. Once we were awarded the contract, they put us together right away with Woolpert, their contractor, in order to be able to work together.
This hydro mapping project wouldn't have happened without our partners, NOAA and Woolpert, and we thank you so much for working with us on this project. It's been a delight.